What's up guys, it's Topsy and here we are with the final installment of my custom set, A Journey Through the Stars. And this is super exciting. In today's video we're going to be discussing none other than Jaden himself, and I am so excited to talk about this strategy just because as I mentioned in the yugioh video, I feel like Jaden was done kind of dirty with some of the decks that he ended up getting throughout his run in SpeedDuels. So I wanted to go ahead and do the same thing for his elemental hero strategy, and you'll see what I mean once you take a look at the deck I ended up making for him. But before we get started discussing Jaden's strategy, there is one more thing that I wanted to go ahead and mention real quick. And that is that even though this is the final installment, at least for the character decks for this custom set of mine, I do have one more video coming out that's based on all the miscellaneous cards for this custom box. So in case that you want to go ahead and replicate what I ended up creating for this series IRL, then you'll have some form of template to do exactly what I did. In that upcoming video, I'll have all the miscellaneous cards that didn't make it into the character decks, in addition a few more skills for some characters that really do deserve them. So if that sounds like something that would be interested to you, then this would be a great time to go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that video. Also, in that upcoming video, I'll go ahead and show you guys how you can use all these skills that I ended up making. In addition, if you wanted to go ahead and make proxies for them, I'll even show you guys how to do that as well. So all that stuff is going to be in that upcoming video. Alright, so with all that being said, let's dive right in. Okay guys, so here we have Jaden's deck, and yes, one thing that you'll notice right away is that he has a 21 card deck, and there's one main reason that I ended up doing this, and that's because there's one card that I needed to add to this deck just to make it feel somewhat cohesive to what we're doing here, at least for this arc in the anime. And also in the newest set, the Battle City final set, we have a lot of characters, and I mean a lot of them that have either 21 card decks or even exceed all the way to like 24 card decks. If I'm not mistaken, I believe like Merrick and Bakura both have 24 card decks, and that's kind of like, it's pretty nutty. So I feel like since Konami felt okay doing this for a main set, then I can probably also do that for my set as well. So Jaden's gonna have a 21 card deck, and it's the only exception for this set. So I hope you guys can forgive me, you know. As usual, before we can go ahead and talk about all the cards in his deck, let's go ahead and take a look at each of the skills that I ended up making for him. Alright then, so let's go ahead and begin with the main skill of the strategy, that being Ultimate Hero Fusion. And stay with me, I'll explain why exactly this skill is constructed the way that I made it, so you guys can go ahead and understand why I did it the way I did. This skill reads: once per turn, you can discard one card to fusion summon one elemental hero fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand and or field as fusion material. Pretty standard so far. If you control one of the named materials on the field, then you can use the other material from your deck. Hero monsters summoned by this skill gain the following effect. If this card destroys an opponent's monster, you can target one hero monster or Polymerization in your graveyard added to your hand. This skill can only be used twice per duel. Okay. So that was a bit of a mouthful, and this skill does a ton. But I feel like that's justified given that it's for the hero strategy, and let's face it, until the release of the Neo's deck in itself, that deck had like no good skills. Like almost all of them were really bad. And essentially what I ended up doing here is that I try to replicate, while making it a bit more modern, the skill that Alexis ended up getting in her very first deck for her Fusion Cyberblader strategy. And I feel like this goes ahead and makes it as to where you're still able to play a lot of your fun, gimmicky hero monsters, like your Fling Wingmans, Thunder Giants, Plasma Vices, etc, and truly feel like you're playing as Jaden in the anime. As a whole, this skill should be fine just because you do need to control one of the named materials on your field in order to use the other one in the deck. As for the additional effect that the fusion monster gets, I feel like that's still okay, just because the Cyberblader skill that I talked about earlier also gives that Cyberblader monster an additional effect. And in my opinion, I think that one of the biggest issues with the hero strategy is that you lose resources really quickly. So if you have a way of regaining some of those resources somewhat cohesively, I feel like that's fair because you're either adding a hero monster to your hand or a poly. And I don't think that's too busted, but give me all your thoughts in the comment section below. Alright then, so as for the second skill, and that is Hero Tag Team. And this skill reads: activate the skill where you control 2 or more elemental hero monsters with different attributes on your field. But each of these skills can only be used once per duel. Once per turn, you can apply one of the following skills. Destroy spell and trap cards on the field up to the number of hero monsters you control. Second skill, target one hero monster you control. Until the end of this turn, it gains attack equal to the combined attack of all hero monsters currently on the field, except itself. Also for the rest of this turn, you can only attack with that monster. And I figured this would be a really neat little skill for if you wanted to play a hero beatdown strategy that you can realistically do given some of the cards that we've had introduced so far, like Alias. And I feel like that could have been just really fun to do, especially pairing up with a card like Skyscrapers. I don't know. That sounds like just really neat in my head. Also, I like the idea of giving them backward removal just because this would be a very hyper aggressive beatdown strategy for heroes. And it kind of mimics the effect of Stratos, which is a hero monster that I don't feel comfortable printing just because that card's just really good any format it gets printed in. So I feel like in SpeedDuels it would feel really bad unless we put it to 1 immediately, but you know, that's a whole other situation. As a whole, I feel like this is like a pretty fun and simple skill that just gets to the root of what you want to do as a different variant of the hero deck. And yeah, that's both skills so far. As usual, I think they're pretty cool, both of them. I alluded to this in the other video, but Jaden is one of my personal favorite protagonists from the Yu-Gi-Oh series. I think he's really cool. He has a really neat strategy, and I wanted to go ahead and reflect that via skills that make him actually viable. So hope you guys enjoyed those skills. Alright then, now it's time to talk about the monsters in the deck. Alright then, so starting off the list, we have Elemental Hero Neos, Jaden's ace monster throughout the series, at least at this point in the anime. And this card feels like it needs to be added to the deck just because it's such an integral part of Jaden's deck going throughout the series as a whole. And the other card accompanying it is none other than Rainbow Dragon in itself, and this is here meant to symbolize the fact that during the final battle between Jaden and Yubel, Jaden ends up combining both his deck with Jesse's in order to duel Yubel, and this was an integral part of that deck. So both of them in this deck feels really good, and of course, if you can see already, there is a special fusion monster in the extra deck that requires both of these guys. So I think that's a cool addition to the deck. Moving on some more, we have a few new Elemental Hero monsters to the deck. That's right, we have none other than Elemental Hero Captain Gold. It is such a weird thing to say that we never ended up getting Captain Gold in SpeedDuels, given the fact that we've gotten pretty much every other field spell searcher in the game. Warrior Atlantis, Harpy Queen, the Archfiend guy. Like, why not give us Captain Gold in addition? This feels like a real, like, L moment for Konami, just because it's such an obvious thing to give us, especially when you take into consideration that in both the Duel Academy box and the Midterm Paradox set, Jaden's deck was essentially a mere copy of each other with like 2 or 3 cards different. So if they had sprinkled in a card like Captain Gold in one of the 2 decks, that would have been a perfect way to introduce them. But of course, Konami being themselves opted not to do so, which is really weird. Moving on, we have a pairing here of Elemental Hero Heat and Lady Heat. These 2 cards in particular are cards that Jaden ends up using in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga, and in that series, Jaden's deck is pretty different compared to the one in the anime, and I love the idea of being able to represent them in this deck. I feel like this deck of his right now is like the culmination of everything Jaden's learned so far throughout the series, and pretty much him upgrading his deck to a new level. I did consider making this deck like a hybrid Hero Neos deck, but honestly, Midterm Destruction already ended up doing that pretty well, and I didn't really want to do like a copy and paste version of that deck where there was like a ton of reprints. So we ended up settling with some of the manga heroes. Continuing on, we of course have Elemental Hero Ocean and Elemental Hero Woodsman. Again, 2 other really cool cards that Jaden used in the manga, and Elemental Hero Ocean in particular gives rise to a special version of hero that you can play that is one of my personal favorite decks in Edison, that being Hero Beatdown. And Ocean alongside Alias and Stratos are 2 very important cards in that deck, and I would love the idea of being able to replicate that somewhat in SpeedDuels, so that's why we have them here. As a whole, I love the addition of the manga heroes. Actually, let's go ahead and move Voltic over here too. Same applies to Voltic. Voltic isn't that good on his own, but he feels really good in this deck, so that's why we have them here. Continuing on, we have none other than Elemental Hero Prisma. Prisma is huge. We've already seen that this card was okay because it was printed in Midterm Destruction, and also Jaden ends up using this card in the duel against Yubel to make Rainbow Dragon. And that's kind of a cool little moment in the anime. Continuing on, we have Elemental Hero Solid Soldier. This is one of the few newish At this point, I guess it's kind of old now. Elemental hero monsters that I felt comfortable adding into this deck. Also because this fits really well into the beatdown strategy of it, and it has a neat effect where it's used as fusion material. It's able to special summon a elemental hero monster from your graveyard, so that's kind of neat. I think it offers a lot of utility without being too broken in the hero deck, so I think it's pretty cool. The last monster up, we have Necro Garda, a card that he ended up using in the duel against Yugioh, and it's going to be really important also because of some of the fusion monsters we have in the extra deck. So as a whole, I like the main deck monsters that I gave him. I think they offer a lot to Jaden. They're really cool, they're really interesting, and makes the deck feel less bland as a whole. So give me all your thoughts in the comment section. Now we're on to both the spells and the trap cards, and these are pretty simple to talk about. First up, we have Emergency Call. At this point, Konami's given us pretty much every other form of searcher, draw spell, etc, so I feel like E-Call is just fine. Like, I don't think it's gonna do anything crazy in speed duels, at least. Nothing that comes off the top off the dome, you know. That, or we can replace it for Rhoda, but that's kind of boring. Next card up is Miracle Fusion. Actually, let's just talk about all the fusion cards in one go. We have Miracle Fusion, Super Polymerization, and regular Poly. Poly has to be here because it's part of the skill. Miracle Fusion, it's just such an integral part of this deck, and it gives you so much more extension plays moving on later in the duel. And finally, Super Polymerization is one of the cards that is super integral to Jaden as a whole throughout this whole arc. Having this card be part of his deck kind of like shows that growth throughout the series, so I think it's kind of neat. At least symbolically, and also it's pretty good in this deck too. Moving on, we have Night Beam as the dedicated backward removal of the strategy. Of course, we do have the skill that can do that as well, but you know, it's kind of neat little card. He ends up getting this card a few times in some of the older SpeedDuel boxes, so we have it here as well. Last card up is none other than Skyscrapers, the search target for our Captain Gold. And I just love this card, it's so cool. So we have to have it here in order to go ahead and facilitate both the fusion aspect of the deck and the beatdown aspect of the deck if you truly want to play it. On to the trap cards now. We have Hero Counterattack. It's just a really good hero trap card, and it makes it somewhat easier to bring out a card like our Elemental Hero Neos, which is going to be pretty important with the Prisma, but you know, we're getting ahead of ourselves there. Next card up is Hero Spirit. It's just a neat little trap card. It's not that good, but it adds a little bit of flavor to like the hero card pile, so I like it here. Next one up is Power Frame. It's a really interesting trap card that pretty much protects your hero monsters. I don't think it's broken by any stretch of the imagination, but it does make your hero monsters a little bit stronger and survive for one battle phase. So I don't know, it's a pretty cool trap card. I would love to have seen what this card could have done in the format, and if it were even have seen any play. So, I don't know, it's kind of a neat little card to throw into the mix. Last card up is Protection of the Elements, and this is a dedicated trap card for one of the ace monsters of Jaden in the manga, Terra Firma. And I feel like the addition of this trap card is kind of cool in this deck. This is a Omni negate for spell and trap cards, but if you control Terra Firma, you get an additional effect where you can special summon one of your hero monsters that's been either banished or sent to the graveyard. And that's kind of a cool way of incorporating those aspects into a trap card. I like it a lot. It's really cool, really interesting, and really fun to play with in general. But of course, guys, in the comment section below, give me all your thoughts. I love engaging with you guys on there. You guys have always such interesting things to say and interesting things to tell me. But before we end up today's video, we do have a few more things to talk about, that being the extra deck. So starting off in the extra deck, we have some of the Omni heroes we never ended up getting, those being Elemental Hero Escarado and Elemental Hero The Shining. It is so weird that we didn't end up getting either one of these two Elemental Hero monsters, just because given all the Omni heroes we have, these are probably two of the ones that were the most okay for speed duels. Gaia was a bit too strong, Absolute Zero would have been an absolute nightmare, and Hero Blast is neat, but we don't have that many wind monsters in the game, so it felt a little weird adding it. But Escarado and Shining, they just fit in the deck really well, and adds a new dynamic to heroes as a whole. And I don't know, I think that's really cool cards that for some reason Konami ended up forgetting to add into the game. Moving on, we have a few more heroes from the manga, those being Elemental Hero Inferno, which is a really bad card and I kind of wanted to omit from the deck, but we already had Heat and Lady Heat, so we had to add him. And of course, Jaden's ace in the anime, in the manga, as far as I know, is Terra Firma. This card is, again, not incredible, but it's so cool and it just looks so iconic to me. And I love the idea of being able to add this card into the game with the addition of like the Woodsman and the Ocean alongside the cool trap card we have here. I don't know. In my opinion, I think it's so cool. It adds one more layer to Jaden's fusion toolbox, and it's really neat. Continuing on, we have Elemental Hero Core. This is just a generic hero monster for the deck, and it's honestly kind of neat. It's not the most broken thing ever, unless like in the past I used to think this card was broken just because I'm like, oh, how do you out it if you can't destroy by battle? But you know, now that I'm like older and I understand Yu-Gi-Oh better, I know it's not that good of a card. I don't know. I think it's just like a neat card, especially for like the toolbox for heroes, and it's nice to see it here. Last card up, of course, is none other than the Rainbow Neos. One of the integral parts of the card in the duel against Yubel, and it would have been weird if we didn't add it. I had considered cutting it at some point just because I think this card is really powerful. But after much deliberation and given just the path Konami took with some of the cards released in the Battle City final set, I'm like, you know what? At this point, I feel like almost anything's fine in Speed Duels. If anything, if this card were to have been printed in Speed Duels, I would have loved it to be put to 1. That way you can't just spam these out like crazy. It is an incredibly powerful card. But yeah, that's Jaden's deck. Honestly, I think this is a really cool rendition of it. Again, I'm super biased. Hero is one of my personal favorite strategies. I think it's really neat. And I gave it a lot of love, as you can see from the skills and some of the cards that I ended up giving to the deck. Before Duel go though, I have seen some people ask me in the comment section below, Topsy, how do I find the cards that you ended up making? And that's super simple. But essentially, if you want to go ahead and use the skills that I ended up making for these decks, all you have to do is on Dueling Book, go onto the card pool, go onto custom cards, and then if you look up in the description, Topsy Turnip, no spaces, you'll find all my skills, even from the ones that I ended up making for the Duelist Kingdom set. So if that sounds like something you want to go and try out and play around with your friends, maybe just like test around, then they're all there. Or if you want to copy and paste them and just make them into proxies, then you have them right there. But yeah guys, if you did end up enjoying today's video and would like to support me, then leaving a like and subscribing to the channel would be a great help. I am trying to get the channel to 500 subscribers by the end of the year, and I can't do it without your help. But guys, with that being said, I've been your boy Topsy. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you with the next one. Bye.